In a world like this, seeing another human face was rare. It being friendly, even rarer. That was something Kirishima knew all too well, having been raised by the creatures of his village rather than his parents. To this day, his most traumatic memory had to be witnessing his father being torn to shreds by a large, lanky, black creature that murdered him for the crime of merely looking into its eyes. At least the villagers were accommodating creatures. Not quite human, but also not quite monster. They're pacifists to the point of self-harm. They would refuse to raise their hands even at a zombie about to eat their face. That's what their strange constructs, the golems, were for. It was ironic, but a loophole nonetheless. In addition, Kirishima didn't have many qualms about defending the village against invaders. Slaying monsters was his way of repaying the creature's kindness. He traded any loot he acquired from his monster hunts with the local alchemists and priests, and lived a dangerous yet strangely quiet life. That was, until one fateful night. He had been out deep into a spruce forest. It was mildly cold, but his leather armor was giving him well enough protection against the weather. He had his crossbow shouldered. The air was fresh smelling of the unmistakable pleasant scent of pine sap. He chewed on a piece of bread as he admired the view of a crystal clear lake. The moon illuminating the quiet waters like a painting that did not exist. Faintly he could hear the hiss of a spider, but that was okay. He could tell it was still a few meters away. Kirishima had great night vision, not even needing potions to supplement it. And considering his job as a ranger for his village, this quality was very useful. He sat down for a moment, placing his crossbow in his lap. It had seen better days. He should probably ask the blacksmith to look it over. Raising his head, he looked up at the clear night sky. Maybe you could chop a few trees down and build a shelter here. But not while it was night. Suddenly he heard a crack right behind him. He jumped up, raised his crossbow towards the noise. It was too quiet to be a zombie, too heavy to be a spider, and it was green. The four-legged creeper slowly approached. "Shit!" growled the redhead. The creature was already too close. If he shot it now, it would surely explode, throwing him down the small hill he was sitting on. No, this had to be dealt with by running. Quickly shouldering his weapon, he rushed down the dirt mound, the monster behind him picking up the pace. From somewhere he heard the plong of a bow being fired. The arrow only nearly missed his foot. Skeletons. Why did it have to be skeletons? He had one shot. Kirishima was rushing towards the lake. Another arrow. This time it burrowed into his leather backpack. He thanked whatever item he had in there that lessened the blow. And then he jumped. The water was cold. Immediately his head began to spin from the sudden shift in temperature. He put all his effort into diving forward. The skeleton was unable to hit him in water, and the creeper stayed at the water's edge. He thanked the nameless deity watching over him as he continued to swim. However, The short moment of peace was interrupted by his own body, incapable to deal with the cold. He already could feel it giving up. Not to mention, his equipment was dragging him down into the abyss below him. Kirishima was a fighter, but not even he was strong enough to stay afloat. When water began to fill his lungs, and he had no longer the strength to reach for the surface, his only thought was, "Sorry, Father." And then the entire world turned black. When the red had regained consciousness, he almost expected to feel the calming rays of sunshine from the ether, or the deep blackness of the end. But no. He heard the sizzling of a fireplace. Something warm and soft was covering him. He sighed mentally. Kirishima's body must be giving him one last hallucination, making him think he woke up in his bed as if nothing happened. But then the warm and soft thing on top of him moved. He furrowed his brows. What in the nether was that? And then it jumped off of him with a loud thud. Curiously, he opened one eye. He was greeted with the backside of a dog. Wait, he didn't have a dog. Now he was fully awake. The dog barked and ran off. Taking this opportunity, the redhead sat up and looked around. He was inside of a small cottage. The room he was in had a lit fireplace, a red carpet, and an armor stand that clearly had his own armor displayed stood next to an ender chest. The eye on it blankly staring at him. He groaned the moment he tried to move his legs. They hurt like nether and felt very stiff. In fact, his whole body felt stiff, as if the water had frozen his insides. He heard a happy bark coming from outside, and then heard a voice. Your voice. You were a survivor. One like many lone souls traveling your world, crafting your own place. For as long as you remembered, you lived here, alone. Which was scary to you. Where did you get all of these survival skills? How did you know what a creeper was, or a zombie? But most of all, why had you felt the need to rescue this man from drowning? For you knew he could be a griefer. Yet you could not sit idly by watching him die. Especially since he was the first human you had ever seen who wasn't a zombie. Also, Rana, your dog, had taken a liking to him, giving him the warmth he needed to survive. So in your mind, this was approval enough. You needed to accept the potential dangers. You had just finished watering your crops when your dog excitedly jumped at you. Gently you patted her head before making her sit next to your door. The cottage you had built for yourself was tiny, only 2 rooms, yet you somehow managed to cram every important item into it. It gave it a strangely cramped yet cozy flair. Despite your windows only being made up of fences that didn't quite keep the cold out, so the fireplace was a must. When you entered the room your guest was in, you were surprised to already see him sitting up in the bed you had quickly made for him after rescuing him. He smiled at you softly. "Hey," was all he said. "Hey," you replied cautiously. "Did you rescue me?" You nodded. "Thanks." The man scratched the back of his head as he sat down on top of the ender chest. He sighed. "I owe you one." Then he blinked, Oh, yeah. He laughed softly. Seeing him so light-hearted made your heart flutter a bit. Maybe he wasn't a bad guy after all. My name is Eijiro Kirishima. I live in a village, couple chunks from here. You tilted your head before you spoke up again. I didn't realize someone like me was out here. I would have tried meeting you sooner otherwise. You blinked. Like you? You asked. A human! It's been so long since last I've seen a human. He paused. You see, the last people I was with, my parents, I have lost to this monster. It slaughtered them when I was little. You huffed. I didn't realize it was time to give our life stories. He shrugged. The villagers I'm with can't talk. I've been desperate for conversation ever since. Slowly, you began to feel more comfortable, and you smiled genuinely. It's okay, Kirishima. He nodded happily. And what are you doing here? He asked. I guess, I'm a survivor. I have a small farm that feeds me just enough, and I got my dog Rana. It's not much. You paused. I don't know what to say. You chuckled sadly. What do you mean? Shrugging, you muttered, I don't have any exciting backstory. I just woke up and then built this, and that's it. The redhead shrugged. That's okay. What do you mean? He smiled and happily replied, no one needs to be special. You saving my life already makes you special enough in my book. You blushed in embarrassment. Doesn't hurt you're quite cute on top of that, he thought. And then suddenly, he sneezed. Kirishima had barely enough time to put a hand over his mouth and nose. Sorry, he hummed. Concerned, you got up from your ender chest. Are you okay? Must have caught a cold. He sneezed again. You should stay here for a while. He sighed. I can't just leave the village alone. I mean, one night is fine, but... You shook your head. And what will you do? Defend it while coughing your lungs out? Finally, he gave up. Okay, fine. Sighing, he lied back down. Slowly, Kirishima blinked as he looked up at the spruce blank ceiling. You hungry? You asked. Yeah, I am. A few days later, the both of you were sitting outside while he was sitting on a log next to you, wrapped in a blanket. I'm feeling much better, he said with a smile. This was the third time he said that, more in disbelief rather than wanting to be annoying. Seriously, why do you find that so strange? He exhaled for a few seconds to give himself time to answer. Honestly, I don't know. Suddenly he placed his head on your shoulder. I guess I'm just happy. You nudged your head against his. You're belying if you said you didn't develop some feelings for him over these past couple of days. Soon you return to your village, right? Mm-hmm, he replied. And you will leave me, right? He fidgeted. Honestly, I don't want to leave you or Rana. I'd like to stay, but, you know, duty calls. You blinked. Can't I just come with you? He huffed. Really? Kirishima sounded surprised. I mean, Why wouldn't... I mean, why wouldn't I want to go with you? Kirishima leaned back. I thought you'd decline. You laughed. Why do you think I would? Because you lived here for so long. Are you sure you can just leave it behind? All I need is my ender chest. That can carry my important stuff. Also, I can take Rana with me, right? As if to reinforce your point, your dog barked from inside your house. He sighed. I love you, he said in response. You blushed. I think I love you too, you whispered. He turned his face and looked into your eyes, almost expectantly. Or was he just waiting for your permission? With a shaky hand, you reached for his blanket. Chuckling, he wrapped you into it with him. One last time, you looked up into his eyes before taking the moment, pressing your full body against his. One last time, you looked up into his eyes before crashing your lips onto him. He groaned sensually as he felt the softness of your mouth. Your body began to feel hot as you felt his large hands glide over your back. It was comforting, protective. But most importantly, it felt like he was taking possession of you. You relished in this feeling, this comfort. His tongue gently brushed across your mouth. Smiling into him, you parted your lips. Now one of your own hands slowly traveled up to his face. He had a light stubble from his time in the bed, but you didn't mind. Besides, he'd probably shave as soon as he'd be ready to go back to the village. Hopefully, with you and your dog.